Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to have a Q&A with filmmaker Jamie Bourque-Blyan, director of Re-ken-si-le-a-shen. It's funny. I knew about this film for such a long time, and I was like the whole time I was like, what is this word? And I was like, couldn't even say the name of the film. And then I think I heard it said that it was the phonetic spelling of reconciliation. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it is. It's just like just struggling, just like reconcile. Oh, what? It's just funny. But yeah, Jamie's been working on this project for a long time, and we're going to talk to Jamie more about it. And yeah, but before then, we're getting into the trailer, and then I will introduce or let Jamie introduce themselves. And yeah, so let's see the trailer for the film. Let's see, I have it up here.
Grandparents moved to a segregated community, separate.
Okay, let's do that again where you can have sound.
I cannot speak for all Indigenous people. We've all had different experiences with colonization, and they're not mine to share. But I can speak for my family. Why were my great-grandparents moved to a segregated community, separate from everybody else?
It's been documented by Canadian historians, this purposeful starving.
So they all, I don't know if they all starved here, because why would they all die in one spot?
Just so they could leave the good land.
And the land that we're all sitting around right now is where the radar showed some of those graves are right here with us.
My grandparents were imprisoned in residential school, as were my great-grandparents and their parents. A hidden past buried within my family as memory.
When you actually list out all of the things that, residential schools have committed against First Nations people, they really start to sound like concentration camps, like child concentration camps.
These dark chapters of Canadian history are difficult for settlers to accept. We are often told to get over it. It happened so long ago. Move on.
Those are bad memories.
We come from a chapter of trauma, Jamie.
I was invited to South Africa to participate in the Nelson Mandela Memory Work Dialogues. I met 4 extraordinary people, each with a connection to some of the world's darkest chapters in history. I noticed similarities between their experiences and my own. Why were the experiences shared considered crimes against humanity and genocide, but the actions inflicted upon my people were not? Canada wants to be seen as being on a path to healing and reconciliation. How can we say we achieved reconciliation when it does not exist?
Hello. Okay. Hi. That was the trailer. Just caught you off guard. You're just like just no warning. Just was like, hey. Hi. Actually, I never introduced myself. Hi, my name is simply Aretha. Or sorry, my name is Aretha Greatrix. Sorry, I'm streaming, so I always say that other way. But I'm Aretha Greatrix. I'm program director for Dream Speakers Festival Society. I am the program director. I program the film festival every year, and of course, I'm a filmmaker and content creator myself. So, yeah. And I've invited Jamie here because Jamie actually was supposed to come and do a Q&A after the screening of the film Reconciliation, but you were sick on Sunday, and so we decided that it probably was best that you didn't and come in person. So I said, hey, if you want, we could do it online. And so I would interview and we would talk about your film, and people would have time to ask you questions, and we could talk about the process. But first of all, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So Tamse Toya, my name is Jamie Bourque-Blyan, and I am from Pasqua Mustu Siagan, which is the Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, in Treaty 6 territory. I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable right now. I'm sure some of you, if there's anyone there, you can see like I have a tooth that's missing. I had a veneer. I've always had. I have 2 veneers in the front here. And when I was about 19 years old, I used to work at a pizza place in a place called Lacklebish, Rocky's Pizza. And every single night, not every single night, I shouldn't say that, like Monday, Tuesday, no wait, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Like, we always went to this bar outside after we got off work. And I was talking to a cousin of mine, and her boyfriend, who I didn't know was her boyfriend at the time, got upset that I was talking to my cousin because he thought that we weren't cousins. So he walked up to me and he hit me in the face with a beer mug. And that's how I lost my teeth. But basically, I get these veneers put in. They only last about 10 years. So I'm on my 10-year mark since I had the veneer put in, and it just fell out a couple of days ago. So a little bit shy about that at the moment, but I just wanted to share what's up with my smile today. Where do you want me to go from here, Aretha?
Where do you want to go from here? Well, let's start with the questions. I was saying how you didn't get a chance to come to the Q&A. Fortunately enough, you were able to send 2 people to come and do a Q&A afterwards, and they were Aaron Paquette and Debbie Houle, who were part of the film project. And they answered a lot of questions, but there were some questions that they couldn't answer. And I think there was a question about like, how do you go about getting funding and getting started when you have this idea to create a documentary?
It's gonna be a long answer. And I think it's a long answer just because of the specific film that I made. So folks, if folks haven't seen the film, it talks a lot about a history or experiences of Indigenous folks that there's a lot of folks out there who might not see it as truth. And when you get dollars to make a project like a film or a TV series, it's for people who want to invest dollars in it. So in order to get people to invest in your project, they need to believe in it. So I was sitting on the Aboriginal Healing Foundation as a youth advisor in about around 2009. And I was making short documentary films about residential school survivors and their experiences, but I wanted to show the intergenerational effects as too. So I interviewed a brother and a sister, Ken Ward and Myrtle Ward from Enoch Cree Nation, just outside of Amiskitchewa-Wasagan. And they were sent to Blue Quills Residential School by St. Paul, Alberta. And what I did is I interviewed them both in front of a green screen, and then I interviewed Myrtle's daughter and a niece of theirs to show, for them to share for Myrtle and Ken to share their experiences, but also to show like how the intergenerational trauma trickled down into her daughter and their niece. And we shot it with green screen and we animated the memories with these like shadow puppets, kind of. They were animated, they weren't shadow puppets, but they had like a silhouette. So because I was making these short films and because I was on the Healing Foundation, I was sent a message from the Nelson Mandela Foundation in South Africa. And they were asking me to come to South Africa. That's all I remember. And I thought I was being catfished. So I ignored the message, of course. Like, come to South Africa, please, we'll pay for everything. I was like, nope, I'm not going. And then I just went about my life. And then the foundation here in Canada, they contacted me like, Jamie, the Nelson Mandela Foundation wants you to contact them. They really want to talk to you. You need to message them back. Sorry, I'm still kind of sick. So I did. And they basically asked me like we're really interested in the films that you're making. We think they can be a part of memory work. And I was like, what do you mean by memory work? And they talked about how I was making these short films, sharing people's memories in order to preserve that memory, but for the purpose of healing from a traumatic past. And so I knew I was going to South Africa. I knew I was going in about 6 months. I was making movies. I like this was a big deal, and I needed dollars quick to go. And I wanted to make a film about it, but I didn't know exactly what I was going into. So Rogers at that time had a 5,000. I'm having a really hard time pronouncing my THs with my tooth. It was just like coming right out. But I got $5,000 from Rogers to go to South Africa, and I think I rented like a camera. I paid for like a carnet in order to get it down there, and I just filmed the experience. And basically, what it was is they invited about 26 people from 11 different countries, and everyone, like, so there's people there from Germany, from Cambodia, Kenya, Argentina, Canada, Croatia, Bosnia. All these people worked with memory indirectly or directly through the experiences of their parents and their grandparents. And it had like a very like indigenous vibe. So we're sitting in where were we? I think we were near Pretoria in South Africa, and on this animal reserve, and we're like sitting in this huge room. We're in this like circle, and it felt very familiar. It felt like a circle methodology type of approach. And all these people started to share their experiences of war and colonization. And from Canada, they invited myself, an Inuit woman, and uh, a white woman who was working with the Conservative Party at that time. And all these other people, like they all had these very common, like we were all asked to like bring something from our country, and we're gonna sing a song. You're gonna sing a song with your countrymen. That's what they called your countrymen. And so I'm sitting there with this Inuit woman and this white woman from Ottawa, and I'm like, I had a Métis stash. I think the white woman had a toque, and the Inuit woman, she had like her drum. And I was like, what's I'm not singing "Oh Canada." I was like, what are we gonna sing? So I think we made up a song, and it was really weird to see though, like all these other countries, they all talked about the type of history that they had, and myself and these two other people, we couldn't. We didn't know how to share a lived experience of what it meant to be a Canadian, I guess, at that time. So I left South Africa. I was there for maybe 2 weeks. I left. I was really, how do you say? I think I was upset because all those people that were there, they were building memory works about their country's history. Some of them were building museums. Some of them were making films. Some were writing books. And I just knew, like, when it came to the experience of Indigenous people, they like, what do you want people to know when it comes to the experience of Indigenous folks in Canada? And I think at that time I said something like, I just want people to recognize it as truth. Like, why don't you believe some of the experiences that we're trying to share with you? And yeah, it was, I think that was, I left South Africa, and I was like, okay, I had this idea. I'm going to make this film about memory. And I was going to showcase all these different memories in these different countries and how they relate to Canada, like how they're similar. Because people, when they think of Canadian history, they think it's really boring. We study everyone else's history but our own. That's what we did anyway. When I grew up, like we didn't focus too much on Canadian history. It was mostly different countries. So, I think what happened is I applied to the National Screen Institute, and I approached it from a perspective of, because I think I wasn't really sure, like it was 2009. I was doing a lot of research about Indigenous experiences online. I think that's when Kevin Arnett was being blacklisted for saying that there was remains of children at residential schools. I didn't really know what a residential school was at that time. Or to the extent of what they were. My mother studied them when she was in university in the 90s, and like my grandparents went to one, but I just didn't know exactly what they were because that wasn't really shared with me. And I approached this film that I wanted to make from a perspective of, you know, is this true? There's these people talking about how horrible these places were. Is there any truth behind it? Because I couldn't even say if there's any truth behind it at that time or not. And so basically, I started to pitch it to a lot of Canadian funders in so-called Canada, like broadcasters, and everyone just came back to me and told me that the story you're trying to tell is not true. And so I think it's one of the reasons why it took so long to make this film, is because I actually didn't get any, besides that Rogers gave me $5,000 and they gave it to me to like make a film about me going to South Africa to meet Nelson Mandela. I think that's what they thought. I'm not sure, I shouldn't say that, but I think that's, I didn't really know what I was making at that time. And I actually submitted the films to docs in Thessaloniki in Greece. And so again, I got accepted to go to, my film got accepted to go to this doc forum. I think I was the only Canadian team that went, actually the only team in North America that went. And basically what they did is they picked about 60 films, 60 projects, 60 teams. They fly you out to Greece. They don't fly you. You got to pay for everything yourself. I think I ended up going to Greece with $50 that time. I show up in Greece. I stayed in this hostel. I got bed bugs so bad. I'm allergic to bed bugs. Like I got bit all over my face. I remember waking up in the morning and there was like marks everywhere. And that's how I started like pitching my film in Greece with a bunch of bed bug bites all over my face. So I show up in Greece and we're there with all these other projects, and they made me stand up in front of everyone and tell everyone what my film was about, and I still really couldn't say what this film was going to be. And they tore my film apart in front of everyone. So they just tore me down, basically. And then I got to work with these really great directors and producers and editors all across from the across Europe, and they built my project back up again in about 4 days. And on that fourth day, I had to stand in front of an auditorium of about 400 people and stand in front of a pitching forum. So there was about 8 funders on the stage, and you got 7 minutes to do your pitch. And after I read my pitch about what my film was about, and my film basically, if I remember how I pitched it, it was, you know, I'm Nehao, I'm Métis, I'm Indigenous from Turtle Island, which you may know as Canada, and I was invited to participate in this dialogue process about memory. And as I was listening to everyone else's experiences of war and oppressive legislation and colonization, I was able to relate to those experiences because they're the same experiences that I would hear about back home that my grandfather would tell me about, the things that his uncles and that his parents had to deal with. And I was upset because their experiences were considered crimes against humanity, but the actions taken upon Indigenous folks here in so-called Canada were not. And in many cases, a lot of them still are not. Because when we talk about truth and reconciliation, it's always just about the residential school era. And that's only one component of colonialism that needs to be unpacked in order for reconciliation to be achieved. And a man, Theory, from Belgium, he said yes to my project. I think I got 2 yeses that day. And because I got those 2 yeses at an international pitch forum in Greece, I was able to bring my project back home. And I pitched it to Jean LaRose, the CEO of APTN, at the Banff World Media Festival. And I think it was maybe 2017, I believe. but he said yes to a development phase for the film. And so development basically is like, they give you about $10,000, 20,000, 50,000. I think we got 10,000. And with that $10,000, you put together a demo, we put together like a beat sheet, a pitch package with a budget, schedules, a projected finance structure. I think at that time we were hoping to make this film for $1.6 million because we were going to be, I never wanted to be in this film from the very beginning. I did not want to be in this film. But we were going to go shoot in South Africa and in Germany and in New Zealand. And we wanted to show like the different memory works in these countries and how they are effectively allowing people to heal. And what can we do in so-called Canada in order to start acknowledging our own truth and experiences here and creating memory works about them. But then I think COVID hit. So we finished development, we submitted for production, and we got approved for production with a budget of $1.6 million. The thing though about making a film in Canada, especially with like APTN, I'm sorry, am I talking too much? Is this cool? Like,
Go on. Yeah.
So the thing about like APTN, the thing I love about APTN, and also the really hard thing I think it is for the broadcaster, is they have a limited amount of dollars and have with the expectation to make a lot of like great competitive content in the commercial market in about 60 languages. How many languages are in Canada? 60? 62?
Like in Indigenous languages in general?
Yeah.
Oh.
Indigenous languages.
I have no idea, but it's more than 60 because there's 9 in Cree just alone.
Yeah, so like there's and they get a budget of I think around 200. I forget what their budget. Okay, their budget like maybe a tenth of what other broadcasters get in this country, and it's for so many different languages. So usually, what happens when you make a film and you get a broadcaster interested, usually it's ideal for them to give you about 20% of your budget, 15 to 20% of your budget. So for me, that would have been around what? Geez, maybe $300,000. And the reason why it's best to get a higher contribution from a broadcaster is because when you have to build a finance structure. So like they were going to give you a certain like 15% of your budget. And you have to go to places like the Canada Media Fund. And in order to qualify with the Canada Media Fund, who could potentially give you 60% of their budget, you need to come to the table with a contribution, I can't even talk my damn tooth, with a contribution from a Canadian broadcaster. It has to be at least, like if you were to get into the POB program, it has to be at least 12% of your budget that you have to get from the broadcaster in order for them to commit. I think what was it 1 year? So we applied this 1 year, and we only got I think 5% of our budget from APTN. That's all they could afford to give us, which is sad though. But like they do their best. I love APTN; they're very supportive. But the amount of dollars that they are given to distribute to make content in this country that for Indigenous creators to create, it's not an amount that to allow other folks to want to invest in your project as well, to contribute to your overall finance structure, which sucks because what it does is it really ghettoizes some of our content. And this has been a problem in this country, being an Indigenous filmmaker for I've been making films since 2009, so about 15 years, and this has always been something that has been talked about.
So what was the final budget then? Like for your film? How much? What is your final budget?
The final budget was $600,000. We had to bring it way down. Wow. And one thing we had to do it is because when we went to the Canada Media Fund with our 5% with the $1.6 million budget, we got told no, like no, it's not going to happen. It's too low of a contribution, and I think we got maybe a 70 in the grid for a marking, and in that year in order to get funded you needed a 75. So the next year we brought our budget down to about, I think we brought it down to about $600,000 the next year. And COVID was happening, so we didn't have to travel anymore. And we basically how did it go? Because we didn't have to travel, it brought our budget way down. Like I directed this entire film from my phone on Instagram and WhatsApp from my couch right there. If I wasn't, the scenes I wasn't in, I directed from my couch. And basically what happened was, because the next year when we applied to Canada Media Fund, our budget was lower. So, we cut our budget in half. So our investment from APTN was now like 11%, considered 11%. And then we scored a 77. But that year you needed an 80 in order to get the financing. So it's like, so what ended up happening was, because of COVID, if COVID never happened, I don't know if I would have been able to make this film. Because we got COVID dollars from the Indigenous Screen Institute. They come on board. We applied to the provincial top up for Canada Media Fund. We got the Alberta Media Fund. We also had, who else do we have? We got Indigenous Screen Office again for production. So we managed to make the film for about $600,000, but there was like, a lot of no's at the beginning, not wanting to invest in this film. We have to get foreign investment first in order for people to want to come on board. And that's usually how it works in this industry, is in order for everyone to say yes to your project, you have to get almost like everyone wants to come on board last minute when you're almost completely financed. That's when people start to say yes. And in order to get those few people to commit dollars to your project, it's a really frustrating process. And a lot of applications and a lot of no's. Like I got no's from so many broadcasters. I got no's from so many funders. I got to the point where I just had to numb myself and just keep on applying with no big expectations until we finally got the dollars to make the film. And then when you make the film, when you're making the film, you don't get all the dollars at once. You get them in like 3-4 payments, like in installments. So you have to go to a bank to cash flow your project. And I think I needed around $200,000. And I grew up in Buffalo Lake. I grew up in like a typical type of res house. It's a community house. It's a house that potentially, doesn't belong to us. We can't use it as an asset to go to the bank. Being Métis in Alberta, because I'm from a Métis settlement, like my family does own, like my immediate family, we own about 700 acres of land, but it's Métis title land. So again, it's not something I can take to the bank as an asset in order to cash flow my project. But the really good thing about having funders like APTN or the Alberta Media Fund or the Canada Media Fund or the Indigenous Screen Office, the bank sees that as an asset itself. Like, oh, these dollars are guaranteed. You have these funders. Like they want to see funders on your finance structure that has a really good track record. And then that's how RBC ended up investing, I think like $180,000 in order for me to go through production. That was a long answer. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Well, and so, I don't know about you, but so anytime I tell people that I'm a filmmaker and I'm a producer, they always want to like pitch me ideas. And I'm like, well, no, I normally do my own projects. And sometimes I'll do other people's projects too. Like the one I'm working on now is the swing therapy one with Dr. Darlene Auger. And it was always so funny how it started, because she called me one day and was like, hey, I'm doing this study next week and I want to turn it into I want to document it. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I was like, she's like, yeah. So can you do that? And I was like, okay, well, like, what's your budget? Oh, we don't have any money. Isn't that what you do? And I'm like, I don't have just money laying around. I have to apply for money. And I'm like, and that's a process that can take anywhere from years. I'm like, but it's not going to be here by next week. And it's like this understanding of where they think because you're a filmmaker and because you do work with big budgets, and I can get the money. I'm just not by next week though. And it's that assumption that I have just money laying around that I'm just going to put towards a project. And I have dollars for specific things, but it's for projects that are tied, like money is tied to things. It might look like I have a lot of money in my bank right now, but it's tied to a project that I got a grant for that I have to spend it on. And then I have to account for to my funders afterwards and do a whole bunch of reporting afterwards saying I spent this much money on this stuff. I'm like, it's not just money I have lying around. And I
No.
think it's really important for people to understand that, yeah, if you do have an idea, like the idea is just a starting point. The actual behind the scenes and the process to actually get the dollars is hard because you have to get first someone to believe in your project, and if they believe in it, then they want to support it. But at the end of the day, they can believe in it all they want. What they really want is to make sure that they're going to make money off your project. And there are a lot of great ideas out there, but if it's not something that's going to make them money, and they're trying to think of who their audience is, and I could see how even with your project, because yeah, my first documentary was on the TRC when it was here, right? And it was hard. When the graves were found, I was like, yeah, if you go to my documentary, the commissioners told us this. They were here. They were going to go into somewhere down in Red Deer. There was a school where there was graves, and they had already talked about how many graves they had discovered then. It's not a new thing. It was only highly publicized just recently, but we've been saying these things for years. Our families have always told these stories. They know of kids who have gone missing, or even siblings who just never went home and no one knew where they went. And it was like, we knew these things, but still no one ever believes us. And it's only and I and it's so frustrating because we still have people that are writing books, writing platform have platforms, and keep saying things like, "Oh, we're not telling the truth. These things didn't actually happen."
Yeah. And one thing I will say about that, like I'm not trying to discourage
Mm.
anyone either, because like there's many times I'll go pitch a project, even to CBC, and like, oh, you're Indigenous. Why are you not pitching to CBC or to APTN? Or no, sorry, Indigenous content is just really niche. There's no market for it.
Mhm.
I've heard that a lot. I've also heard, what else have I? Your experiences are not true.
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing I will, like, I've done the pitch inform in Greece. I've worked and lived in Germany for a while. I've also joined a delegation that went to China and did pitches there. There, and I would say, like, they told me in China, I was sitting down doing pitches, and we pitched a project, actually Aaron Paquette's book Light Finder.
Yeah, yeah.
We pitched that project at that time. And I was sitting there with this representatives from, like, I think it's Disney Asia. I think that's what they're called.
Mhm.
But they told us, like, we will never do a co-production with producers from North America. Our morals are not the same. But when they looked at Lightfinder, like, but here I see similarities. I see shared values. We would potentially want to develop this project with you.
Mhm.
I've heard the same thing when I was in Europe. Like, a lot of people, they don't know about the experiences of Indigenous people on Turtle Island. They see us as a lot of the times, like, I met folks where they thought Indigenous people didn't exist anymore.
Mhm.
They thought we were the thing of the past. We are super romanticized in places like Germany. There's an author out there from the early 1900s named Karl May, and it was this author who wrote about, he never visited North America, but he had a lot of successful novels about a character that he created, a German character that came here, and it's kind of like a Tonto and Lone Ranger type
Mhm.
of type
Yeah.
of plot, but there's a market for Indigenous content in Europe as well. They want to know the experiences. They want to hear these stories, because
Mhm.
usually when I went pitching in Greece, they're like, we don't learn this. We don't hear about these experiences that Indigenous people went through. When we think of Canada, we think of it as,
Mhm.
oh, colonization, it was such a great and beautiful place and everyone's so happy there. And that could be true, but like, I feel, in order to be authentic and to really share the true experience of Indigenous folk, they're not always going to be good. And just think that they just are is like, I feel folks are kidding themselves when they feel that way. Oh, that could never happen in a place like Canada.
Mhm. And it is true because yeah, no, I knew about that. I think I talked to someone one time about it and about how you know, there was a big news article where they talked about they put on like actual powwows and they bring Indigenous people to Germany to basically teach them and show them how to do things. And I'm like, why are we doing that? And it was, I felt so conflicted about it because I'm like, well, I mean, I guess, but then I also heard from another side that they they have this concept of a soda pop Indian, basically, which is they don't even think we know our own history because we're so tainted by colonialism that we actually lost it. So they are more authentic than we are.
Wow, hey.
And so I was like, okay. um, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are colonized in some way. And we are because I there's so many things that we do in our culture that that I definitely see colonialism in it. Like for me, like growing up, you know, my I wasn't hit. I was maybe yelled at, but I wasn't yelled at in front of my grandparents because my mom would get in trouble because my grandfather's like, you don't yell at your kids, you know? And it was this concept of like you have to give them room and space, just make sure they're not hurt, but let them just be kids. And so my mom kind of, you know, had that same upbringing as well. And so and so sometimes that I'm here and they're like, no, kids have to be very behaved and do all these things and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, no, I wasn't raised that way. Um, and I'm like, that seems very colonial. And even the whole dialogue about like ribbon skirts, to me, like I'm like, it just screams like colonial because I'm like it's the intention of what we're doing and it's like the modesty thing and I'm like I don't like it just seems it doesn't seem right. It seems something that would be like very Catholic, you know, very religious and I'm like but we're not that way. Like it's about the intention and who we are and even just like um you know, I worked on that project when I worked for Edmonton Two Spirit Society, like that whole series too. Like we learn like there's so many things that have been like watered down. Like there's some truth to it, but it's like we're reclaiming a lot of these histories and these things that we knew that people are people and you're supposed to accept them who they are. And that's something that I've always been taught. My mom raised me with that. You know, people who are who they are and you should accept them for who they are. And I was raised with that but not everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I think that's the thing with the film too, is like one of the things that we cut from the budget was the emotional supports that I knew that I was going to need. That was
Mhm.
one of the first we taken out. Um, and the project suffered because of that. So in this, but like I didn't just direct the film. Like all these experience I just shared about raising dollars. If you're a director, you might be part of that process,
Mhm.
but I was a showrunner. Like I own 75% of the incorporation that was used in order to pitch the project. And you have to be incorporated just in order to pitch.
Mhm.
Uh, and I also so I had to do the fundraising. I had to like get all the loans in my name. I directed
Mhm.
it. I was also the creative producer. I was in the editing room every single day, and and I mean I hosted on it too. And because of like some of the things, like the interview, the scene with my mother, um, when we're making bannock in her yard in the where I grew up,
Mhm.
and some of the things she shared, like I I knew my great grandfather. I knew my great grandfather was a pedophile. This is
Yeah.
something that was in my family.
Yeah.
But no one, and how that trickled down into my aunts and my uncles and then to my cousins and how it was all around and how we normalized it. Um, that was something I wasn't prepared to hear on film,
Mhm.
I wasn't prepared to actually start to have that conversation with my mother on film
Mhm.
either. So I went into like a freeze, I think, after we finished filming. Like there was a year and a half where I should have been meeting with the auditors or the accountants and getting everything lined
Mhm.
up, or I should have been going into the edit suite or meeting with composers or talking about some of the marketing and getting the marketing plans finalized. And I couldn't even answer an email. And I got to the point where I had to go to therapy about 2 to 3 times a week. And I think that's when I actually first started going to therapy. And I honestly feel like at this film, we shot it in maybe 2001, I believe. We
Mhm.
just released it last year, 2023. But it shouldn't have taken that long to make. I
Mhm.
bet I probably could have released it a year earlier, but because of what I was starting to unpack
Mhm.
and being in COVID too, so just like being in my house in Buffalo Lake with my son
Mhm.
and not really hanging out with anyone, just having to sit with those feelings. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's one thing I would never regret.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it is hard, and no one talks about, like, especially when you're the subject of, like, when you're talking about it. And when I paired this with an animation short that was about two spirit warriors. And the reason why I paired it, and we called it Two Spirit Stories specifically, was because of even in the animation it shows it, like, and there's no words to the animation. It's just all animation, right? It's a beautiful story. But I think it's that concept of, like, the role of a two spirit, and, like, bringing that story and being the fighter and pushing the society forward, and and it's kind of illustrated in that. And to me, I'm like, it lended a way to be almost like lay the foundation of saying, like you doing this work and telling the story of reconciliation and bringing all these people together, I think, is your role as a two spirit person. Like, that would be your role in the community. And so I was like, I was really trying to use that as, like, a foundation of being like, yeah, you're like the two spirit warrior that's, like, bringing this conversation to light and having those conversations. And so I thought it was, like, so important to, like, to pair those together, and to know that, like, there's such a strength, because in strength you also have vulnerability, right? So it's like having those two guiding you and pushing the story along was, like, so important.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I that's why I'm working on this in therapy. I'm trying to take
Compliments.
compliments and kind words. I'm
Yeah.
working on it. Thank you so much.
Hmm.
That's I'm a little teary right now. But I don't think if I was a cis straight male, I don't think I would ever be able to make this film and the amount of no's, and because I just took it as like
Hmm.
as horrible as it sounds, like being told no or not getting what you want. It's like, oh, okay, just another Tuesday. um, so yeah, I honestly feel like if I didn't have the lived experiences that I've had, I probably couldn't even do that background producing work for
Hmm.
this film. It's where we got it.
Hmm. So in the film, what brings the story along is, like, you form a bundle, the person in South Africa forms a bundle, in New Zealand, and then Croatia, and then there's the four bundle. What I wasn't clear, unless I missed it. What happened to the bundle, and where is the bundle?
The bundles, okay. I why did we include the bundle? How do I?
I feel like it tied all the stories together, right? So it's almost like
Yeah,
each person.
like a tangible type of piece.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if it was symbolic or if it actually was a real bundle somewhere.
it is a real bundle.
Okay.
The bundle's here in my home.
Okay.
Um, so my teachings around bundles is a bundle can be like it can be items for sure,
Mhm.
but bundles also hold like ceremony and
Mhm.
stories and song, and they're meant to help people. Like at one time, they helped our people, our nations, overcome an obstacle that they're facing at that time.
Mhm.
And I my family's bundles, they're all in museums right now. They don't exist in our communities anymore.
Mhm.
And this is one of the questions I have as a two-spirit person when I go into ceremony is like we hear a lot about how these teachings were given to us in ceremony, these songs were given to us by Creator, and but so much is lost. And for me, it's like, it's okay. So if stuff is lost, and at one point it was given to us,
Mhm.
why can't we ask for it again?
Mhm.
And making these bundles, like we of course we couldn't show like I incorporated quite a bit of ceremony into this film, and we weren't allowed to show what these items were going into this bundle.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's a couple things like I wanted it to represent the four directions that we told the story from,
Yeah.
bringing those four pieces together. I I wanted it to, I had a really good explanation for this when I used to pitch it, but it was like, it's not just about our traumas. So this film, I didn't want this film. This is
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I made this film. Like, I narrated it with a softer voice. I used really beautiful music composed by Cheryl Sue Pegaham and Debbie Hoole.
Mm-hmm.
We incorporated like, the grandmother song by Leo McGilvery and his wife. And I wanted to make it visually beautiful as well and really like calming almost, just because of the types of traumas we talked about in this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want this bundle just to represent our traumas. I wanted it to be, if we are to pray to create, when we pray to creator to help us through whatever it is that we're going through, I wanted a bundle that was going to help, like, where we can pray for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not just ourselves. Because when we do go into ceremony, we don't just pray for ourselves.
No.
We pray for our family. We pray for the people who are those who are yet to come. We
Mm-hmm.
pray for those who used to be here. We pray for people we haven't even met. And I just wanted that bundle to represent that. So the bundle's here. You know, as a two-spirit person, I'm not ready to be a bundle carrier, but I just wanted to like also show like I feel there's some things, because there's a lot of like negativity I feel when it comes to when people want to engage in ceremony again, and how what's the proper way.
Mm-hmm.
And my elder and Lorette Goulet in the film, she just talks about like, well, if it speaks to you into who you are and you feel you're doing the right thing, it's I just feel that anyone can just like, not anyone, but I think I wanted in the film, I don't know where I'm going with this right now, but I wanted the bundle to represent something like, it's not just these old pieces from a long time ago that we use to pray to create, but they can be new things. Like we're facing something right now that we've never faced as a nation, as nations before.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those tools that that are needed in order to overcome it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was just a way of me exploring that. If that makes sense. What did you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, it was right, and that's the thing. Like everything, and we always assume that things are either negative or positive, but they could also be both, right? And so it was like, to me, it was a form of healing, but understanding that, because it is, if we look at medicine wheel teachings, right? Like people think like, oh, it's just like whatever, and the colors just mean nothing. It's like, no, they actually do. There's multiple meanings behind each color, not only directions. It's the four walks of life. It's the transition of life. It's like when you're a baby to when you're an elder, like, like there's a whole transition. There's a life cycle. There's so many things that the medicine wheel actually communicates. And so, it's the new, it's the old, it's whatever, but it's your hopes and your dreams, and it's like hoping that maybe it contains the prayers and the hopes of people, right? Especially, and not just us, like from South Africa, from everywhere, because these are all groups of people that have had trauma and bad things happen to them, but they also have good things happening to them. So it's like putting those all into one and almost like amplifying it, saying like, hey, we're stronger together than we are apart. And so it's not only about saying, hey, I'm fighting for our people and what we're doing, but I'm also fighting for your people, and I'm fighting for your people, and I'm fighting for the next people, and I'm fighting for the people that still don't have those freedoms. So for me, it was like the bundle was very symbolic. And so I didn't know if it was like going to be buried or held or whatever, or like maybe occasionally it needs to be charged, like, to keep that spirit alive, to make sure that we have that strength to keep going on and keep doing this work.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I tried to give it to my elder. I was like, I'm not ready. Please take this. Um, and I do have it. It's in my room. I keep it. So I have been not practicing, but learning about our medicines for the past. I think when my father got sick with brain cancer in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
I think I talked about this in the film. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to save my father,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started going to medicine camps, and I started going into ceremony and sweat lodges with his shirt of his, um and I've been going every single summer. I think I have about I have 12, 20, I have 36 medicines in my bundle right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have these teachers and elders who I engage with all the time. And I keep telling them, like, I'm not ready, because I'm not. It's a commitment, and
Yeah.
I know what's that I'm not ready for. And so what I do is I just keep the bundle here, and I do need to do something with the bundle, though. And I think maybe you asking this question is creator's way pulling out to me that I need to do something with this bundle next time. But yeah, it is here. It is. I've been keeping it safe, and I've been keeping it with my medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that was a big thing, like in the film, like you're right,
Mm-hmm.
like how it presents these different experiences, because when people think of Indigenous experience, it was always like, oh, like I said in the film, like it didn't happen, or it was so long ago, get over it. It wasn't that bad. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was, and I think that's why we wanted to not compare or take away from the experiences that happened in South Africa during apartheid, or
Mm-hmm.
in South Africa in general, or in Nazi Germany, or in New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
but just to show like the experiences are pretty similar,
Mm-hmm.
or there's similarities, sorry. And why are some experiences valid and why are others not?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a big thing for that.
And also the pattern's the same, right? Because if we look at South Africa, even New Zealand, even Croatia, it's because they wanted something and someone was in the way. We were just in the way. That's the thing. We were in the way. So it was like, hey, how are they going to get it without us being in the way? So let's move them out of our way. And then that's how a lot of that happened. And if we look at things that are happening to Indigenous people all around the world, that's probably the same story. It's probably
Yeah.
the same story for the people that it's happening to right now. They're just in the way. They want something and we're in their way. And so if we're going to talk about, oh, this just happened, long time ago and it's not happening now. No, it's still happening because we're still in their way.
Yeah, that's true.
So how are we going to stop that? Like, we can't just tell people, hey, it's not yours to have, maybe.
Well, I'm trying to think of what a memory work could be in Canada. And I wanted to go deeper into this film. I actually wanted it to be a series, because I wanted to like show some of the memory works that are really effective.
Yeah.
And I think a really good one is in Dachau, which is, I think it's in Poland. So
Yeah.
it's a concentration camp. So all these labor camps and concentration
Yeah.
camps in Poland, they don't have Jewish youth as tour guides, or people who may have been
Mhm.
there, or someone who's had a family member who was there.
Yeah.
It's a mandatory process of German students. They have to go and live in these places, and they have to learn the history, and they have to share that history with people as a tour guide. Like, could you imagine, like so Alberta, for example? Alberta
Mhm.
had 33 residential schools. We had the most in the country, but there's only 2 of these buildings still standing
Mhm.
as a whole, and that's going to be one in Kainai, and then the other, which is now Blue Quills University outside of St. Paul, Alberta.
Mhm.
And we have like there's in the film Louis Lapatak, he shares some of the experiences in the film when he was sent there as a child. But to this day, Louis is given tours to people
Mhm.
of Blue Quills. And kudos to Louis for having the strength to do that.
Mhm.
But like, why? And maybe that's his choice. That's fine. That's fair. But to me, it's like, why are we not making it mandatory for folks from like the U of A to go to Blue Quills, to live there,
Mhm.
and make it their commitment to
Mhm.
share those experiences and give those tours? To me, those types of steps, that would mean steps towards reconciliation.
It's funny that you say that it's a series because I'm part of Diversity Voices this year, so I'm going to Banff again this year, and
That's
And I was looking up people, and it was funny because I was like, I was talking to ESIO, and they were like, yeah, you should meet with these people. So I was trying to Google them and try to set up meetings. And when I typed in APTN, your name showed up, and I was like, oh, it's Jamie. So I clicked on your name, and it showed up projects, and Reconciliation was on there, and it said it was a series. and,
Not.
and then when you said it, I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, wait, it's not a series. Is it going to be a series? I'm like, yeah, I guess I could see it being a series. um, because yeah, it is true. Like, I feel like the other thing too is that, and I tell this all the time, and being an international Indigenous film festival, I tell people all the time, Indigenous is such an umbrella term. And we talk like even Christine and I, we talk about this all the time about how um a lot of our terms that are being used are really political terms, right? Like Indigenous, First Nations, like they're really politicized because really not. Really have our own communities and languages and cultures within ourselves. We're actually quite diverse. But to call us one people, they're like, oh, Indigenous used to be Aboriginal, used to be, something else, the Indians, these are really political terms because they were trying to think of what they're going to call us as a group. But Indigenous itself is actually like is all around the world. And people don't know that there are so many Indigenous people around the world. We have the Sami that are in the north, the Anu, which are the Japanese Indigenous people. There's I think someone was telling me that there was a study or something that was done, a report that was recently done, and like 80% of the Philippines are Indigenous because they
Yeah.
have been colonized over and over and over again by multiple people.
Mhm.
And so
You know why
like
they call them Philippines?
no. Why?
Because it's when they were colonized, it was Prince Philip,
Yeah?
and it was like calling him my little Phillips.
Really? I've
Yeah,
never heard that.
I
Wow.
have we have a friend at work. She's Philippine. She shared that with me a few weeks ago. Like
Oh
that's
wow.
why.
Yeah, and people didn't know like it was colonized by the Spain, so that's why some people said like they're the spicier Asians. Um because yeah, they were colonized by Spain as well too, and even their language, even some of their words that they use are like are are Spanish, or actually yeah, are actually Spanish words as well. So like,
Mhm.
there's a whole group of people that are Indigenous. Because I remember someone came up to us. We did a presentation at TwitchCon last year about Indigenous representation on Twitch and streaming. And they were from the Philippines. They were like, yeah, I want to join. And I'm Indigenous, but I'm Indigenous from Philippines, but no one ever like recognizes it. And I'm like, I'm not the Indigenous police. You tell me. I'm like, I'm going by what you tell me because I know, and I work for an Indigenous film festival. And I mean, same thing here. When people tell me they're Indigenous, I just tell them, you tell me where your people are from and how you're Indigenous, and I will just take your word for it because I I know that there's so much information and history around the world that I don't know. And so I'm relying on you to tell me who the Indigenous people are of that country. So I just need you to tell me that and express to me in that way. Because yeah, I think we had so many people who would apply from Iran, but I was like, hey, but who are you? Who are your people? Where are you from? And they were like, we're from Iran. I'm like, that's like me saying I'm from Canada. That doesn't help me. I need to know who are the people that you're from. And then this year there were people that actually were like, no, we're from this community, and we're from northern Iran, and this is where we're from. And I'm like, thank you. That's all I needed. um, and then there's like I just learned of a new one not too long ago, and it's basically between I think Russia and like Finland, and it's not the Sami, they were a different group of people. And I had never heard of them before ever. And I was like, wow, I've never heard of them. But the Sami people had heard of them, but they're also indigenous as well. And I was like, I'd never heard of that. And so again, there's so many indigenous people around the world. And I feel like just based on figuring out who the indigenous people are around the world could lend to creating a series out of that.
Totally. Actually, you know what? Have you ever heard of I think it's called the World Indigenous Broadcasting Corporation, or the World Indigenous. I went to one of their events in Winnipeg about 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it includes Canada, I think the States, so, I think just some. but in South Africa, but also the Sami folks. So there is like a group of creatives, of broadcasters, of world indigenous broadcasters, and the Sami are actually included in there.
Yeah.
I remember going to that group, or I don't know why I went there. Did you ask a question?
Well, I was implying that if you wanted to turn it into a series, that just by identifying who the indigenous people of the world are and then going to them and then doing memory work with them specifically. Because what we use at Dream Speakers is we use the UN definition of indigenous because we needed something to say what indigenous was. And it was the easiest way for us to identify what indigenous means because it's so politicized, right? And some people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's just because I've been here forever." There are people that in the States who I've heard make this comment. They're like, "Listen, my family's been here forever. I'm basically Native American." And you're like, "No, you're not. And that's not what that means." And they're like, "Yeah, no, I'm indigenous to this place. My family's been here forever." And I'm like, "No, you're not." No, that's you're taking it way out of context. They're like, "No." And just think of the way that if you've ever heard an actor go like, "Oh yeah, I'm a native Canadian." They're using it in a way that's not what I'm using it as,
Yeah. Native speaker. I heard that a lot. I'm a native speaker, but like I'm a native speaker of English. I'm a
Yeah.
native speaker of German. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have English background, so I can technically say I'm like native Canadian, native English speaker. It's technically my language. I'm like, but yeah, no, no, it's totally different context, and I think that's it. It's just really using the word to define what it actually means. And then once you understand what it means, knowing that there are lots of indigenous people, even under that description, that then could be used to do that memory work.
Yeah.
But it could also be like if you think of the Japanese intern camps that were in Canada. Like, what about those people?
Yep.
That would be one.
That would be one.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, when I used to pitch this film, because remember I mentioned there was like 28 of us from 11 different countries. And so just spoke some Argentina, and they talked a lot about the military dictatorship in the 70s. And they have indigenous nations down there, but there's a lot of erasure down there with the indigenous folks.
Yeah.
During this dialogue process, like I just didn't go to South Africa. Like I went to Germany, I lived there for a while. I was in Bosnia, I was in Croatia. We had a dialogue process here in Edmonton too. So all these people came to Edmonton and stayed at the River Cree. Um, they also went down to Argentina and Cambodia. And I honestly wanted everyone in this film. But when I started to pitch it, it was 6. It also included Daniel Rafikis from Argentina and Oot from Cambodia. And what I was told when I started to pitch the film is 6 stories into a feature length. It's too many. No more than 4. That's why we only went with the 4 that we went with. But also too, like it was really hard for South Africa to pick between Bongani and Shirley, because like I Shirley's like this second generation settler colonizer or third generation, but I really loved how Shirley was like. Shirley to me gave me the definition of what an ally can be.
Yeah.
And like she I'm not sure if you're familiar with Shirley's story, but like Shirley, she was part of the freedom fighters in South Africa during apartheid. Like she was accused of blowing up a provincial building, and she escaped South Africa on a melon cart, and then went trained as a freedom fighter in Cuba, I believe. And then when she went back to South Africa, she just gave birth to her son, and her and her infant son were imprisoned and put in prison for about 4 or 5 months, I think, right? So there's like a huge story that Shirley has, and Bongani, like I love Bongani. Bungani's like the best I've ever met. But he and I'm really sad I couldn't be on camera with them because of COVID. But like Bongani, like the stories of the reservation and how their family structures of removing men from the family structures, and their reservations, like just those parallels that they have to the experiences, that's what drew me to them. That same lived experience, right? Or like Amina. Like Amina's she's a Muslim woman, she doesn't really talk about what it means to be Muslim in a place
Mhm.
like Croatia, which is predominantly Catholic.
And I remember her saying that, and then like nothing really came about that after. But it could have been its own story, and I think that's it, right? I think each person could have been its own story on its own, right?
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
that's the hard part is like how do you how well first you have to get buy-in, and then how do you get like people to then support the project, because if they're only going to give you that much money and it's like, well, it's one thing to film in one location, it's another to have to go other places, which is I'm also learning quite hard to figure out how to do.
And to get and try to, like, we use 5 different camera crews and trying to find 5 different camera
Mhm.
crews that can look like whose perspective can like look in
Yeah.
unison to make one project and not look totally different. That was hard too.
Yeah.
But Amina, she doesn't identify with the Muslim identity because there's so many things, like we can say about our indigenous identity. There's so many things about our identity that can dictate or
Mhm.
um, constrain our life, put identify with a lot of things. Like, why should my identity dictate my lived
Mhm.
experience?
Yeah. So this was the first film festival that the film was in. Is there any other film festivals it's going to be in?
We just got word that it's going to be playing at a Chimawin Film Festival in
Okay.
Saskatchewan on June 7th.
Okay.
So, a Chimawin Film Festival is the first Indigenous film festival in Saskatchewan.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure Dream Speakers was the first in Alberta, like, right, or the first in Canada, I think, at that time, and like when in the 90s when it came out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, our first film festival ever was 92.
92. That's it.
Yeah. And we're
Um,
technically first in Canada.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's amazing.
Second in the world.
Oh, wow, hey.
Yeah, there's only one other one. It was in the States.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and we just submitted to a few more. Like I'm really trying to get into the film markets where we pitch the film.
Yeah.
So we pitched to a couple, or we submitted to a few in New Zealand, a few in South Africa, Croatia. I'm looking at some in Greece. I think I'm gonna resubmit it to the Docs in
Mhm.
Thessaloniki one. If you've never been to Thessaloniki, I strongly recommend you go. You can like go out to a restaurant and you
Yeah.
can see like Mount Olympus, and Africa is just over there, and you basically sit there and there's a bunch of cats, and you can drink wine and eat tapas all night for like 3-4 hours, and it'll end up costing you like 25 euro at the end of the night.
Oh wow. Um,
That's the best place for food.
there's one in Australia because my film was in the one in Australia that I can't remember the name of, and it was so horrible. They
You
actually
don't see?
reached out to me because they saw my film in at Imaginative, and so they were like, "Hey, we want to bring your film there." They're like, "Will you come down?" I'm like, "Are you paying for me?" They're like, "No," and I'm like, "Then no."
Yeah, that's the hard thing, hey? It's the travel. It's
Yeah.
expensive to be here. It's
Well,
so expensive.
and no one tells you about that either. Like there's making your film, and then there's actually making uh getting dollars then for travel for promoting your film.
I think you dropped out there,
Oh,
sex.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think it was
There's
me.
making your film and
There's make your film, and then there's actually getting raising funds to then go and travel and put in film festivals and attend them and do the marketing and stuff like that. Like that's a whole amount of dollars that you have to find elsewhere, unless you can write it into your budget, which is
um
hard on itself.
well, actually, there is a way. So
Hmm.
I invested from my first time going to South Africa with my
Hmm.
$5,000 and going to Greece with $50. I think I spent about $90,000 out of my own money over like a 7-year period into this film.
Hmm.
The thing is, though, when you're doing research, when you're developing a film and whatever you shoot,
Hmm.
like you shoot it really well because you can carry that cost over into your production budget, and you can get your money back and call in the stock footage.
That's actually what I did. So, when we did the swing therapy one, I ended up getting uh Darren Donahue to come, and I was like, "Listen, I have no money." I said, "I have no money, but they're doing this study next week and we need to film something and I have no money. I have no money, but will you come and film it for like the day? And he was like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I might be able to like pull like $600 from somewhere to like just give you something. He's like, no, 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 it's fine. It's fine.
Amazing.
And so when I had a meeting, I was like, hey, so, you know how like we buy footage? Can I just buy the footage off of? And they're like, yeah, no one's ever asked us that before. And I'm like, yeah, can I do that? So basically that's what I'm doing. I'm buying the footage back from him. I was like, yeah, you just keep it. Just hold on. Let me do it that. And that's how I'm paying for it in production. Cause yeah, they don't usually pay for production that's already happened, right? Yeah. No,
Yes, they do not. They do not. But if you do it as stock footage, it
yeah.
helps. You can always carry your development dollars over. Actually, you have to carry your development dollars over into your production budget.
Yeah. So yeah, no, there are little tricks that you learn along the way.
You know what? Actually, so
Mhm,
apart from making films, like I help teach. Blue Quills has a media program.
mhm,
And so they offer like two script writing
mhm,
classes per year, and they're taught by a filmmaker out of Vancouver online. But
mhm.
like at Blue Quills, they also teach like introduction to like camera, lighting.
Yeah.
They also teach producing and directing, so budgeting and scheduling and
Mhm.
where to apply for dollars. They also teach it there too. It's actually a really good program if you never heard of it. It's really
And it's
they
online?
don't get a lot of intake. Sorry.
It's online? They can do it online?
A lot of the courses are online, yeah. Not
Oh,
not not like the camera ones.
yeah.
Uh camera like but I think they're trying to figure something out where they could 'cause Blue Quills is far. It's a
It is. So
yeah.
like I said, we used to have that we had used to have a youth program where we would teach filmmaking, right? And we had like it was like a 2-week summer camp thing. And then we lost our funding for it. And ever since then, a lot of our kids have been like, "Hey, when are you bringing that back?" And I'm like, "Well, we're just trying to find funding for it." And it was a successful program. It was funded through it was UNDRIP? No, not UNDRIP. No, it was something like that. Anyways, they pulled it out and they basically gave it to all the friendship centers to go through.
Oh,
And that's how we
nice.
used to get funded before. We used to get funded through that before they took it away and gave it to the friendship centers. Um, but they realized the model didn't work because it just didn't work. So now I think they were like taking it back, and I don't know what's happening with it, but we're still looking for funding. It was a successful program. We had, because we had a project after, and we had like a lot of positive from the youth. A lot of our youth went on to do filmmaking. Like we had like Brandon and Nathan Alexis were both in our project. Like they went through our program. Um, oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget their name, but I don't remember their. They passed away recently or a couple years ago. Um, but yeah, no, we had like a lot of people that kind of like went through the project and are actually working in the film industry. So like
With
it
Dream
was good.
Speakers?
Yeah,
I remember one film because I remember Dream
yeah.
Speakers used to take folks out to Banff. Akina's shirt.
Akina
You
shirt,
want
yeah.
to she made a film called Hot Soup, and it was basically her being like this stalker following this guy around Banff. It was the funniest thing I remember. It's always stuck in my head. Hot Soup.
There was one I think that was a part of the same group, but there was one that did one that was like it was like a cougar on the loose and it was like an auntie and she comes like she has like twigs in her hair, she's coming out of the woods. She's like there's a wild cougar on the loose.
You know what though? Like if Dream Speakers like call Maryland straight up Blue Quills. Like
Okay.
I know they want to do something with their program. They got money from Indigenous Screen Office. I know that.
Mhm.
They have a ton of gear, a ton of editing.
Yeah.
I think they got about 13
Oh
edit
wow.
suites.
Okay.
They got like a recording room, and
Yeah.
then a lot like the budgeting, the scheduling, directing, all the writing classes. They can all do them online.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I will because like I said, we want to bring the program back. It was very good. I know Vancouver Film School, we used to refer people over there, like if they wanted to go like further and get more information. And I remember I was talking to like the program person there one time. He was like, "Yeah, no, um, if they've been through your program, we already know they knew the foundation. So like that, it was a good, if they had a reference letter from us saying that they finished the program, they were like, they were already in. And I'm like, that
Amazing.
was such a compliment. And I was like, thank you. And they're like, yeah, no, it was a good program. And anyone who came from there always knew like the good foundation. It was like really good. So I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. Well, I'm writing 3 more references right now. So um yeah, so no, it was a good program, and I really wish it would. And actually that's how I started there. I think I started in like 2013, and I only was there for like a year and a half, and then the program lost its funding, so then I didn't have a job anymore because basically that's how my position was paid for, was doing this program. And we would bring in filmmakers and stuff like that, and they would do the work. And yeah. But now I'm program director, and this is what I do. Uh,
Love it.
so
I
yeah.
just love it.
Yeah, I do. I love it. I tell people all the time, I live and breathe Indigenous film. That's what I do all the time. I see all the films, I watch the films, and then I program all the films. So there's so many film things that I do that, like, anytime anyone's like, "Oh, do you watch Indigenous film?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I do a lot, actually. I'm just horrible with names, though. That's my biggest problem. And I'm like, "Yeah, there's that filmmaker that does that thing, and I don't know what it's called, and I don't remember what their name is, but I'll look it up and I'll tell you in a sec."
No, I know I've been getting names right all evening. This is so not like me. I remember this one time I had a friend who I've been friends with for 2 years, and I hung out with them we're at this one event. I hung out with them one day, and then the very next day, they took off their glasses and they put their hair in a ponytail. And I walked up to them and I introduced myself to them. I was like, Jamie, it's me. So I get the name thing. I do.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's faces for me. I think maybe it's more faces.
Yeah, I'm horrible. But yeah, so okay, so you're done this. It's going in film festivals right now. You had a broadcaster, right? Because I know we had to.
Yeah. So we have a broadcaster. AP10's our broadcaster.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah,
going to be available online at any point?
I think I think it's on Lumi, and I think you can access it through Apple TV.
Okay.
And we just sold it to FNX, so that's First Nation Experience in the States.
Yeah.
We just sold it to that broadcaster. And it was showcased at what's the buyer's market in Cannes? MIPCOM? MIPCOM? I don't know. I think it's MIPCOM.
Yeah.
It was featured there in October in France last year,
Mhm.
and I was told by our distributor we have a few sales from a few countries there as well.
That's good. That's
I
good.
don't know which ones they are yet, though. That distributors are really quiet sometimes. The how filmmaking is, like, it can be so quiet,
Yeah.
and then everything all at once.
I know, right? I know, like I said, like the film festival, I'm technically supposed to be producing 2 things right now, and I'm like, okay, it's actually on hold because I'm like, I'm gonna have to contact the the funder and be like, well, I already mentioned, I'm like, because we were supposed to film and do actual film production in February, but no one's schedules aligned. Then March, and then it was like April, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be doing a film festival. I can't do it in April. So the funder already told me, just give me an updated production schedule and just send it in. So I'm like, yeah. So I'm basically pushing it back.
Yeah, that's the thing with filmmaking. Like, some people, I maybe Indigenous
Hmm.
filmmakers, I'm not sure how a lot of folks are, but for me, when I get in trouble, and I'm not even in trouble, just an email, someone asking for something, I go into freeze and I think I'm in trouble.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure, 'cause, like, and I went to school in Kazan school, and like we were taught by like Philippine nuns,
Hmm.
and I remember still getting not me getting the strap, but I think the strap was like abolished maybe a few years after
Yeah.
I started school. But getting in trouble is like a real thing for me, where I will shut down and I'll just ignore the email. But honestly, when in the film
Hmm.
industry, I feel like that happens all the time. So if
Hmm.
you get like an email to get something in, or it's super late, just talking to the folks and let them know like where you're at, and that let them know it's
Yeah.
going to be. Well, everyone's always okay with it.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny too, because like I mean, there were a few people that either the email went into the junk mail or they just didn't see it, and then I needed the film and I was like, hey, I really need the film now. And there were some people that didn't respond to me, and I was like, okay. The third email was the one where I was a little more aggressive, where I was like, okay, you need to respond to me like today, or I'm removing your film. Like, but I'm like, but all you have to do is communicate with me. If you're like, listen, I'm gonna be late, like just tell me, it's fine. I just need to know. But some people didn't even respond to me whatsoever, and I was just like, okay, yeah. And then one person like last minute was like, yeah, we're not interested in participating anymore. And I was like, okay. And then when they responded back and they were like, it's because it's going to be online. And I was like, but when you submitted, we told you it would be online this whole time. So you're just noticing this now. And again, you could have communicated with me. Like we could have worked something out if that was your issue. But I think I think I think they were more upset that I was just getting more aggressive with my emails. 'Cause they didn't respond to me at all. And I was just like,
Triggered them. You triggered them.
yeah.
It was,
And they were like, well, we're just going to quit then. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I was like, all right, it's okay. But yeah, it always makes me feel bad because as a filmmaker too, I've had those emails where I'm just like, hey, Aretha, remember you said you're going to get me that thing? And I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Nope. I don't remember.
It makes me want to go and like email all the people I've been late on and be like, I'm so sorry. I know what it feels like to be on the other end, but I will do it. I promise.
Actually got to send a couple of those emails out. I'm actually behind on. What am I behind on? I have a project with Indigenous Screen Office. I'm behind on. I need to catch up on. It's like development of a new drama series.
Mhm.
Like I love documentary, but documentary's so hard. I strongly recommend if you're gonna make a film, a documentary film about your traumas and you're in it, get a lot of help, a lot of support, as much as you possibly can. It's not
Yeah.
an easy process. I'm really stubborn though, so I put myself. I think I'm a little addicted, or I normalize trauma a little too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, behind on one project with the Indigenous Screen Office, and we just finished developing a children series, animation series, 13 episodes for APTN actually as well. And I'm excited for that one. It's like it teaches the Nahewan language, so it's a fun project, and I need to do fun projects right now.
Yeah. Do a comedy, like just laugh.
Something, you know, and I do like I did the documentary.
Mhm.
I have no problem helping people going through those processes with how to get it done. Like I have a really great mentor too, Eric Rebelkin, from Entertainment. My partner there, Tiam Gagnon from Vancouver, who helped honestly, like she would just those days where I was doing like a funding application till like midnight after I do my job, and she would just sit on the phone with me and just not even say anything, but just having someone there as you're filling out that application and sending it in, like that's those people who can show up for you like that, that's they feel they're not doing anything, but them just is so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know why I trailed off that way. What
No, it's okay. Yeah. Well, I unless you have anything else you want to share, or I don't know if I have any other questions. No one else really asked any questions. Just my brother's making fun of me because I don't remember people's names, and I'm always like that person that does that thing that one time, and he's like, I'm so bad with people's names. That's why I would say I'm also a horrible networking person as well too, because I'm always like, oh, I don't remember that person's name.
No, honestly, I don't think people a lot. I think that's a very common experience. I wouldn't. Don't hold yourself to it. Let it go. Just walk off and be like, "Hey, how's it going?"
So Jody and I used to own our production company together, right? And so we are both horrible with people's names. So we had a system. Whereas if I went up and I introduced her first, it meant I didn't know their name. So it's then it was her responsibility then to introduce herself and ask that person's name. So I'd be like, oh, this is my friend, this is my like business partner Jody, blah blah blah, blah. And then and then that would be her clue that she needs to then ask their name. And then, but if I introduced them first, it meant I remembered their name and who they were. And then I would do it that way. So, and she would do the same thing. If she introduced me first, it meant that she doesn't remember what their name is. And so it's my job to get their name from them. We had a whole system down. It was good. That's the only thing that I miss about having a business partner or someone to actually do stuff with, was having that support. And so I do it kind of now too. Like my partner is I do a lot of co-productions with his Lee Skidmore.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a lot easier to have someone with you helping you.
Yeah. The thing. Okay. What's something I can. The film industry, though, it's very.
Mhm. If you had advice for someone as a starting filmmaker, what would you tell them?
A lot of times you'll go into like a networking event. Everyone's always like, with a glass of wine. They're like, "So, tell me about your project." Um,
Yeah.
don't share too much. Try to keep it general as possible. I like, honestly, you can tell someone, like, they'll say, "Oh, who's funding your project?" And when they find out who your funder is, like, I had people, I told them what a funder I potentially had, and they called that funder and like, "I heard you're helping so and so with this. I want money too." And it kind of like ruined that relationship for me, you know. So like, the film industry is all about relationships and good relationships.
Yeah.
It's a small industry. You're gonna burn bridges. I'd never intended to burn bridges, but I have. It's a really stressful industry as well. Dollars are always a big thing. Learning how to pitch your project, I think that's one of the biggest tips I can give someone. Like, I know I just told you not to share too much.
Mhm.
In order to share your project with a funder is vital, but also too, that's kind of scary. Like, if you look at a place like CBC, when you pitch to CBC, you have to sign a release form, basically saying like, "Here's my project. If you don't like it, you can turn it down. But if you make something very similar, I can't come after you." Which is
Jesus.
scary. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there's actually
yeah.
a lot of pitch processes that are just like that.
Yeah.
Um, or being a filmmaker in the West, a lot of these bigger Canadian broadcasters are in the East, and if you're an emerging filmmaker, they can say something like, "Well, I don't really know you. I really love your," and I was told this a lot. "I really like your pitch. I really like your project, but I don't know you. I would like to team you up with a producer that I know out East and someone that I trust in order to get your project off the ground." And sometimes you have to say yes to that. But the really scary thing about it, when you say yes, is I think a lot of, especially Indigenous folks, I feel when we tell stories,
Mhm.
it's all, "Hey, remember when?" Or
Yeah.
that one time. It's like, it's something that's so personal. And like, I can go to my uncle's and he'll tell the same story from when I was 14. He'll tell it almost every single time I see him, but I love hearing that story.
Yeah.
And it's connected to my family. And the thing is that when you go and you pitch these ideas, like, it's a part of you. And like, and I think this is what I meant by like how our bundles carry stories. I think
Mhm.
our stories that we carry are part of our bundles.
Yeah.
And we don't just want to give them away to corporations and to non-Indigenous producers in order for them to benefit from. Because usually what happens is you'll say, "Oh, well, I have all this experience and I have all the assets and I have all these dollars to get your project into production. So when we get the dollars from our funders, I'm going to take 80% of them. I'm going to give you 20%."
Yeah.
And that happened to me a lot. Like, I got burned in the industry so much. It got to the point where I was working with this mentor and I developed, maybe, I would say, 7 projects, TV series, dramas, documentaries with them over a span of like 7 years. And then one day they walked in, they're like, "Hey, so we got all these dollars for your project. We need different funders," which we did. But they're like, "But they also invested themselves." Like,
Mhm.
they're like, "I invested $25,000 into these projects. If you don't give me 25 grand, I'm going to take ownership of them. They're mine now." And that happened to me, and I had to raise $25,000 really quickly in order to gain
Mhm.
control and ownership of like stories and experiences that I openly heartedly gave. So be really careful what you put out there.
Mhm.
Ensure that you have ownership of it. If it's your story, make sure that you own 51% of that story, because if of that incorporation that is utilized in
Mhm.
order to access dollars to develop that story. Because like they will say like I may be a producer or I may have all these assets or I'm the only one who can help you, but if they don't have your story, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
That's an asset in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The last year, the year before I went to Banff, I had entered into a script writing contest and I didn't win, but I got top 10. And a producer in Vancouver reached out and wanted to turn my idea and option the rights to my idea to turn it into a TV show. I went down to Vancouver and I met with them. And basically, it was the same thing. It was like, you don't have any writing credentials. I like your idea. We need a producer. And I said, well, it's my idea and I want to be involved in it. I'm like, can I just be in the writing room? Like, I just want to be a part of it. And I was going to get a creator like credit for it. But I was like, and I want to be a part of it. Like, and it has an Indigenous female lead. Like, I want to be like even a consultant, something. And they're like, well, if the networks allow it, maybe we'll bring you on. And he kept just saying like, yeah, we're gonna option it for like standard rate, standard rate. And you know what the standard rate was? $500.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, and the script was, and the contract was $250 up front, and if it gets picked up, he'll give me the other 250. And the whole thing, and I read the script. I read the contract, and it literally said like, if the networks allow, then I could be involved.
Was this his own contract, his own template?
Yeah, it was from his lawyer.
I got templates. I'll share templates.
And so anyways, I went to Banff and I met with he's one of the actors. He's on a show right now that's just ending called Run the Burbs. He was on a not Corner Gas. Yeah, Corner Gas? No, not Corner Gas. The one about the Korean family who owns a gas station in Toronto. Or gas station, a corner
Corner
store.
store.
Corner
Kim Corner
Kim's
or something.
yeah, Kim's Corner Convenience or whatever. Yeah. He played Kimchi. He's an actor. He lives in Calgary. And so we met with him and I was telling him this idea. And at that point the creator of that show was there. And they were talking about how he created that show as a as a play. And he was a playwright, right? And so that's all he knew. And then someone saw this play and was like, this needs to be a show. And then he was like, but I don't know how to write this. So then he worked with him to then create the show. And so this actor was like, yeah, look at this thing. You need someone who's willing to work with you to create this show, not someone who's trying to take from you. And he's like, because it's yours. It's your voice. And it was like this like white British guy who basically was trying to take it to then sell it to like, I think he was trying to sell it to like NBC or something like that. Like he was like, and the whole time, like, I didn't feel great about it. And I was like almost gonna sign it to like sell because he was basically gonna option the right for 5 years. So basically, I couldn't even touch it. Even if I wanted to do something with it, I basically was optioning the rights for him to do it for 5 years. And and then after that conversation that I had with that actor, he was like, "No, you have to tell it. You have to do it. You need to find someone who's willing to work with you to develop it and not give it away." Because he's like, "It doesn't sound right." And too many times we have people in the industry who see the idea, see the potential, but don't see that you're the person who is attached to it and actually created the idea. They want to take it from you because they think they can make it better and make money off of it.
Totally. And
And
honestly, like when you create an incorporation for a project, you have your script, you create an incorporation to pitch that script. That incorporation shareholder structure, you as the Indigenous creator does not dictate the amount of money that producer is going to get, like at all. It does not dictate that just because of, oh well, I'm going to own 49%, that means I'm going to get less money. No, it doesn't. It just means that you don't have the final say on where the story goes, and it's not your story. Like it does not dictate how much money they get at all. So if they ever try to say it's a well, I have more experience, I deserve more dollars, call them out on their bullshit. It has nothing to do with how much money they're going to get. You need to, as the owner of that story, you need to have 100 or not 100%, but at least 51% ownership in that incorporation that is being pitched.
yeah. And I think that was it. I think in that moment, I already felt like because I didn't know that and I didn't know any of that information, I think they were trying to play on my naivety basically and take it from me. But it was funny because like my gut instinct, I kind of felt like I was selling my child. Like I didn't feel good about it. Like I lost sleep on it. It literally bothered me, like just in my gut, it bothered me. And so I was like, I feel like I'm telling myself I don't want to do this. And I don't feel comfortable with this. And
Oh,
then after that conversation, it just made me feel so much better because he was like, maybe it's not right now. Maybe you do need to like work on it and develop it. Because I had written an outline for it. I didn't actually fully write a script. I only wrote like an intro, and then I wrote like an outline of what like a whole episode would be, and like with all the backstory and all the pitch stuff. Like I didn't actually write it yet, and so I was like, so my
but
brother always complains about it because it originally was a vampire story. It was like a sci-fi detective vampire story. My brother's always like, "When are you gonna finish that?" And I'm like, yeah, eventually."
you'll finish it.
Yeah.
The industry is so like it's a corporation. It's how do you say? Corporation is colonization. The
Mhm.
film industry is like the film industry is so colonized, or it's such a entity, a form of colonization.
Mhm.
It's just colonization, like taking ownership of our stories and our languages and reaping benefit off of them, just like they do with our lands and our resources. The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but there's a way, like we can do this. There's a way for Indigenous stories for us to have
Yeah.
ownership of them, for them to create economic opportunities and training in our communities to make us more competitive
Yeah.
storytellers in the commercial market. There is a huge commercial market out there for Indigenous stories, maybe not in
Mhm.
so-called Canada, but there is a world market out there for it. And what was the other thing? What was the other thing I was going to say?
Mhm.
Just one blank. My goodness.
Must have been a
What's
lie.
Oh,
Yeah.
when we go to these like World Media Festival, like
Yeah.
you're going with another. Is there still like 100 folks that they pick each year to go, roughly?
Yeah, roughly about 100 people.
So when I would say, like, if you being Indigenous, when you see other little Indigenous new up and comers in those
Yeah.
spaces, you're gonna see those producers wanting to pray and, oh, what are you working on? Tell me about your project.
Yeah.
I bring them in, bring those folks in, bring them in,
Mhm.
mentor them, share your experiences with them. It's a good way to show solidarity, but also to honor our kinship laws.
Yeah. And I do that. I always tell people all the time, "Oh, hey, Roger showed up finally." um I always tell people all the time, yeah, I'm like I'm there was a saying, it was and I can't remember who said it, but it was basically like be the adult you needed in your life, and it was specifically for kids, right? Like be the adult that you needed in your life. And I feel like that translates to so many things. Be that mentor that you needed in your life. And I had so many mentors, and it's through these experiences. So I'm like, I don't want people to feel this same experience. I didn't know who to ask at that time. Like, who do I ask? So anytime I'm like, if you have any questions about filmmaking, I will share you with you. You can ask me anytime. My DMs are always open. I'm willing to say that and share that information because yeah, no, I'm going to be that person so we don't have to keep making these mistakes or having those experiences. I'm going to share everything.
Yeah, let's trauma
Yeah.
bond.
All right.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. And look at Roger, or look how late Roger is. He literally just showed up now.
Roger, that's at least he showed up. He showed up. Hey Roger, welcome.
But yeah. I mean, we've been going for an hour and 45 minutes. I told you it
I
would be more
know.
than
I
an
was
hour.
shocked. I was like, are you sure we're gonna fill 2 hours? I don't think so.
Back like I never left. I know. It's funny. I think the only, um, yeah, I think the only one who was like just on time was probably Greg Grecois because he had somewhere to be afterwards. He was gonna go have a I think he was having like bannock and something with someone, and so he was like, "Yeah, I gotta go now." I'm like, "Okay." But everyone else has been closer to 2 hours. That's why I'm like, "Yeah, I only said an hour, but it can go longer. It's fine."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so so that's what you're working on next. You're still working on projects. How do people keep up to date with any of your projects and what you're doing? Like, where do they find you?
I'm so bad with social media. Um,
I didn't actually know because I had a tag that was like you could put guest and it would say who the guests were, but I didn't know because you have Instagram and you have like Facebook and stuff, but I was like I didn't know if you actually use that to like be like, hey, follow me here.
I also turned off my tagging. Like I don't think people can tag me.
No.
And I did that for a reason because I was at this restaurant in Calgary one time
Hmm.
and someone tagged me that I was there with them. And then somebody showed up who I didn't want to see. So I purposely keep them off.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's yeah, I definitely I don't think I post enough. Like I post on Facebook, but like Facebook's like I keep Facebook for my family, like
Yeah.
the 1,100 people I probably have on there, they're probably my entire family and my friends, and that's it. Um,
Yeah, I have a Facebook account that's specifically for friends only, and I have a rule: I have to have at least met you once to be a friend on Facebook. And then I have my Facebook page, which anyone can follow. And then yeah, I have the other stuff too. But yeah, but yeah,
I
where do
mean,
people
it's,
follow you? Like, where do they?
I mean, I
How
guess
do you update your fans?
fans. I think probably Instagram. Like I think it's me. I think it's Jamie, Jamie underscore May T. I do drag too. Hey, um,
Yeah.
I'm a really bad drag queen. I can pull a look.
I
I
mean,
can turn a look.
you're very
I can
pretty.
turn a look. I can turn a look, but I'm not a very good performer. And that's fine. I just like wearing the clothes anyway and doing the makeup. Yeah, it's Jamie underscore Maytea or
Okay.
just like Jamie Bourque-Blyan if you're on Facebook.
Fair.
I think we have a TikTok account too. I don't post a lot on TikTok. I had one video go viral where my some people know it's where my smokehouse burnt down.
Oh my God, yeah, I saw that. I was like, I
So I
can't
think
believe. I was like, Jesus. I was like, we have forest fire problems.
there was no fire ban this time. This was
That one time we didn't have a forest we didn't have a forest fire ban.
but yeah, I don't post a lot on there too
Mhm.
either. I'm like I said, I've been in a freeze for the past little bit, and I think I'm just coming out of it to be
Mhm.
honest. But oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, go on.
I was just gonna like I really appreciate the Dream Speakers and providing the platform for this film, and I appreciate everything you do, Aretha.
Thank
Much for
you.
all that.
Yeah. And if you ever need help, setting up your social media presence, Link can help you.
Is it that bad?
I literally typed because I was like, wow, your name is so unique. I'm gonna find other people. There is another Jamie Bourque-Blyan somewhere. Yeah.
No.
I was like, who is this
No,
person?
no,
I think it was like a
I don't think
lawyer or
so.
something.
No, because like my family's last name Blyan. It's not a real name, hey?
Really?
Our last name used to be Blandion.
Mm-hmm.
Family changed it because my family was really involved in the last time we went to war with Canada. So right after the war, we changed it to Blyan and we left Saskatchewan and we came to Alberta. So there was three brothers. One was a blind. No, they're all Blandios. One changed his name to Buffalo, and he moved into Musquechies. Another one changed his last name to Dion, and I think he stayed in the Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
And another one changed his name to Blyan, which was my grandfather's grandfather, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came out here. So, and we're not a very big family. So, someone having my name,
So there's someone on LinkedIn that has Jamie W. Bork. Is that you on
yeah.
LinkedIn?
Am I wearing like a blue shirt? A
Oh,
light blue
hold on.
shirt?
I'm gonna
That's
look.
good.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna click on it right now. Oh no,
My
it is
middle
you.
name, my middle name's Winston. That's the LinkedIn account that I was named after Jamie. Okay, Jamie Winston.
Yeah.
Jamie was a soap opera star that my mom was in love with when she was pregnant with me, and both
Yeah.
of our lives. And then Winston, my dad was a cowboy, and Winston was his like best friend when he used to go was in rodeo. So I'm named after a soap opera star and a bareback rodeo champ person. So yeah, Jamie W. Jamie,
Okay.
that's why.
All right. Okay. That's you then.
See, it was me. Why'd you think it wasn't me?
Oh, I don't know. I could have swore. I think it's because there's someone else's picture there too. There's this white guy. But no, it's not. It's not Blaine. No, that's you too. Okay, hold on. No, this one's a doctor. Is it doctor? No. Just looking up your name here. Just stalking you online, trying to find.
Me? I don't see no other Jamie Bourque-Blyan.
Oh no, it's just Bourque. Never mind.
Jamie Bourque. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
No,
James Bourque.
Blyan. Yeah, you won't find too many folks with the last name Blyan because it's a fake name. The fake name. My family used it to escape Métis I can't even say the word.
Purgatory. Purgatory. Persecution.
Yeah. Well, what?
Persecution.
I can't say it with my tooth like this.
Perk. Oh my god! Now I can't say it. Oh god, I can't. It's contagious.
You know what really sucks though? Like
Mhm.
my first little twitch thing in my tooth. I have no tooth. I'm very vain and I love my smile. And just to be on camera for 2 hours with a missing tooth is just like, I don't know. I don't care at the same time anymore. I don't think.
It's
I think I
okay.
got to that point in my life.
Well, I mean, you had to tell us a story about how you lost the tooth. What is the other fake one then? Is it this? Is it the one next to it?
Nah, but like, so
Yeah.
what happened is when he hit me with the glass mug, like he knocked out one,
Mhm.
and then, me, I think I was 9. I call it a bar fight, but it wasn't even a bar fight. He hit me in the face, and I stood up, and I felt my tooth come out, and I was bleeding, and I was like, "Take me to a mirror." That's the first thing
You're like, let me see the damage.
I think my friend took me to the girls' washroom just to look at myself. I was so hurt. I was so hurt. And that's what happened because he hit the one, and he just broke half of one.
Yeah.
And then I had to get the root canal, and then they told me at that time like the tooth next to it was gonna die next. It's gonna die in like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And I eventually have to have two.
Yeah.
And when it fell out on Tuesday, like I was in a meeting at work on Zoom, and I'm talking, and I was given a really important update. Then all of a sudden my tooth just like wiggled and fell onto the table. I had a hard week. I had a really hard week.
Oh no. Well, and then you were like sick, and then you had to miss the thing, and it was like your first one.
I wanted to come so bad. I was like, I laid on my couch and I took some rat root and neocitrin, which is a good time. And I went to bed before, like I had a couple of people texting me, but I that they were there, and I just went to bed. I didn't even want to pretend it happened. I wanted to be there so bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was almost kind of like because Aaron was there was a lot of question about like government responsibility and stuff, and I was like kind of expecting those kind of questions when a city councilor shows up. It's funny because our marketing person was like, should we say that Aaron Biquette's gonna be here? Because like, are we gonna get like all the people who are gonna be like just mad at the city just gonna show up? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I'll ask Jamie. Hold on.
One thing I hope for Edmonton though is like a city like Berlin. That city is full of memory works everywhere, even on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a place like Edmonton, like there's an Indian agent house I can't even say it properly. Right on White Ave.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like the last sentence in the little memorial plaque that they have here. So I think like, and memory work is like, it's not just about acknowledging history. Like there's a tourism component to it too. It can drive a crowd. Like I think there's so much missed opportunity of what you can do with memory.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I guess we'll let you go, and thank you for being here. And of course, thank you for coming. And if you ever want to learn more about Twitch streaming, just message me. I think we were supposed to be developing a project too at one point that I don't know what's
Which
happening
one?
with that one. The one with
Jared?
Jer, yeah.
No,
I don't
like,
even know what's happening with
we
that
had a
one.
meeting and then we just didn't anymore, hey?
I know. And so I'm on the TELUS advisory committee, so I can't apply for any of the grants. So I can't do TELUS originals or Story Hive. Like I can't because but it was a 2-year commitment, and I only have one more meeting in May, and then after that I'm done. But
Nice.
there is a new project opening up that's going to be opening up soon that I was like, maybe I'll get Jared to apply for that, because then maybe we can do it through that.
Which one?
I think it's the Story Hive one, maybe. Well,
Story Hive?
if we do TELUS originals, it might be a little bit easier because TELUS originals you can get more money, but we have to have a more of a backing behind it.
Thinking about it needs to be a variety show though, hey? We don't Canada doesn't do talk shows.
No, exactly. It has to be a variety show because if we look at, so I was a producer on Voices on the Rise with Eli.
Mhm.
I was the Alberta producer for that. So they do that one and they can have more than one episode, right? So if we did a variety show like that in some way, because I feel like we could make it work through
Yeah,
TELUS.
we should.
Now that I can apply for grants with them again. Because I couldn't be I could work on people's projects. I just couldn't be a key creative role. So I couldn't be a
Um,
producer, director, writer. Like I couldn't be any of those things. I could be like a cameraman, but I'm like I hired those people. I'm like I'm like I could in a pinch I could make it work, but I prefer to hire someone.
well,
Yeah.
this was fun though.
Yeah.
I really like this. I didn't think I was gonna like this too much. Did I do okay
Yeah.
for my first
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Well, we can say bye.
What's that?
Yeah, well, here we'll end the stream and then we'll say bye and then we'll talk in a sec. All right, so thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, don't forget to check out Dream Speakers, dreamspeakers.org. You can still watch the films all the way until May 6th, and one of the films is Jamie's film Re-ken-si-le-a-shen that you can watch online. And yeah, so bye everyone.